I feel very lucky and blessed in my life to have been around numerous amount of badass women, and I think the world is filled with an enormous amount of them. But I had to think about four, which was tough because there was a lot of them.
Well, the first woman that came to mind to me instantly, and maybe it's because I'm in the process of developing her story right now, is Susanna Cahalan, who's the young author of an amazing book called Brain on Fire. And it's really her story of how she was misdiagnosed for a really an incredible length of time by doctors who thought that who thought that sometimes she was making up her illness, and other times just literally looked at her while she was dying in a hospital and said, "Sorry, we have no idea what's wrong with you. We're basically just waiting for you to die." And this was a girl who was in her early 20s, and she had just started a great career at the Post and found new love. Literally just met her boyfriend 3 months before she started feeling ill. And what started off as just a really good place in her life ended up being what I can only imagine to be the greatest nightmare of anybody's life. And when I read her book and how she dealt with all of these obstacles and where she found herself, later in her life, once she was diagnosed correctly, in her late 20s, where she should have been enjoying life, she found herself back in physiotherapy, having to learn from scratch how to talk, how to walk, muscle memory. And this is a person, not just a woman, but this is a person who, when you hear her speak about her life and her experiences, who has not an ounce of bitterness about anything that happened. It's just this kind of clear vision of what her life has been, and that's what it was, and that she doesn't dwell on it, and that she kind of takes it for what it is, and she's ready to tell that story and move on. And then the second person that I've really been inspired by for a long time is this incredible woman from Ghana, Esther Oklu, who was one of the founding members of the Women's World Bank. And she was a real pioneer in microloans. And her story, I always knew about her because of the World Bank, but I never knew how she started out. And about a year ago, a woman told me her story, and I was really touched by it. She started making marmalade, and she would just make marmalade and sell it, and it became this really small business in her village. And then she started taking it to communities and to schools, and she started having contracts with local shops, as we call them in Africa, cafes, and she would sell orders of marmalade to places. So she was kind of running the small marmalade empire. She then went into other villages and taught women how to make marmalade so that they could sell their own marmalade. And then she started realizing that they were making marmalade better than her, and places wanted to buy their marmalade over her marmalade, and people would say to her, "Why are you doing this? You're threatening your business." And she said, "I deserve the competition." And I think she's an incredibly inspirational woman who really understood the concept that we throw around so loosely of building something up from the ground. And she had a massive movement and such a global effect that you just can't deny. And then that brings me to my third person, because her story is very similar to my mom. I believe in the saying that we can't choose our parents, but man, am I so grateful for whomever chose my parents for me. Very much like Esther, my mom was the youngest of a very big family, and got married at a very young age, and didn't really necessarily as a woman have a lot of opportunities that were going to be handed to her. And she just said, "No, that's not how my life is going to be." And my father was an engineer, and she got very interested in his world, and they started a company together, and they have built most of the roads in South Africa that you drive on today, and I'm incredibly proud of that. But this was a woman who, was really, at the time that I was a child, the only woman in construction, road construction. And so I grew up watching my mom, and 70s high boots, and leather skirts, and this fabulous bob and makeup, you know, standing in front of 8 men, you know, talking about things that women at that time were just not talking about. And at the same time raising her child and being there for a ballet practice. And she's an okay lady. And then I just recently finished working with Gillian Flynn, and I wanted to give her a shout out just because I have such respect for women who can write women in the most honest sense of the way and the word of what that means. And I think Gillian does that flawlessly. And I've been very lucky to be able to develop and produce one of her books, Dark Places. And we've finished shooting it, and we're literally locking the film actually today. And so maybe I have her in my mind, but I just have such an appreciation for her when I watch the film, and her reckless regard to write women for their sometimes narcissistic, cold ways, but always with this great sense of humor that just kind of takes you know, this idea that women don't want to be real people, and that they, you know, want to be kind of cushioned and not thought of as people who can make terrible mistakes and have terrible thoughts. And she does it in a way that's very authentic and funny and entertaining. And when you meet her, you just would never imagine that these thoughts are going through this beautiful redhead, angelic face. So there you have it. Those are my women. See you in Elle.